지진물들도 힘이 장하고는 문은 전부는 게다 다그러다간 잔도 심을도 tumba들지 잔라기 쇼음서.
To benefit beings, please generate bodhicitta before teaching. Next, we will talk about the classic of filial piety in Confucian thought. Why are we discussing Confucian culture this time? Some Buddhists have asked me, why don't you talk about esoteric teachings? Why not discuss Madhyamaka and insist on talking about these topics instead? In fact, perhaps everyone, when studying, should always possess a profound sense of selflessness, diligently work to break free from attachment to the individual self, and ultimately establish the profound concept of no self. We tend to think of ourselves as students of Madhyamaka, of Vajrayana, or of Tibetan Buddhism. We often find ourselves boxing ourselves in more and more narrowly, and this inevitably creates certain difficulties. Sometimes, however, in the continuous process of learning and acquiring new knowledge, we can consciously choose to take a much broader and more expansive approach. There is a vast wealth of knowledge available from all corners of the entire world that we can learn from. I think even some ancient knowledge is necessary. This includes aspects of humanities and history, even some of the politics of the time, whether it was dark or not, or certain things that may not quite fit with the present era. If one is a very good practitioner, one can also gain a lot of valuable teachings and key instructions from them. At the same time, if we truly have the opportunity and the inherent ability in various important areas, we should also diligently learn about modern knowledge, including comprehensive knowledge in science and technology, profound knowledge about artificial intelligence, fascinating science fiction, and immersive virtual worlds, as well as all kinds of valuable knowledge and essential information. It is absolutely necessary to fully understand them. Therefore, we may also need to carefully observe our own intricate minds and at the same time thoughtfully engage with the various profound religions within traditional cultures, such as the contemplative Buddhist thought, the ethical Confucian thought, and the harmonizing Taoist thought in this significant regard, as well as some of the very large and influential religious systems in the world today, such as Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism, and the prominent faith of Islam, as well as Roman Catholicism, Judaism, and Jainism. There are many, many such religions if we are interested ourselves. If not, we don't have to force it. You might recite the Avalokiteshvara mantra every day, Om Mani Padme Hum. But as soon as you hear some worldly knowledge, or if the topic broadens a bit, you start to gently doze off. In that particular case, it's also perfectly fine not to diligently learn this profound knowledge. You are simply a truly devoted fan of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, only listening to him and nothing else at all. Om Mani Padme Hum. Or perhaps you are a dedicated fan of Vajrasattva, the revered deity, reciting only Om Benza Sato Hum, and not caring about anything else, and that's fine too. Among us Buddhists nowadays, some people follow only one guru and ignore everything else. Even if Shakyamuni Buddha himself appeared, they would just ignore him, that kind of attitude. But if you're too focused like this, after a certain point, it's uncertain whether your own wisdom will become stable or not. If it doesn't become stable and you're especially fixated on a particular spiritual guru, then if that guru treats you poorly at some point, or if eventually the guru turns out not to be as mystical as you imagined, and you start to develop wrong views at that time, it could become very serious. Could this kind of thing happen? So it's indeed better to keep your mind a little bit more relaxed and to have a deeper understanding of the knowledge of the entire world. If you know a little bit more knowledge, it might be better in that particular way. I would gently suggest that as devoted Buddhists, we should strive to cultivate a more expansive and genuinely open-minded perspective. It is truly important not to become overly rigid in our beliefs, excessively selfish in our actions, or profoundly narrow-minded in our understanding. That attitude isn't necessarily good, especially, as I wanted to say the other day, for followers in the 21st century. It's probably necessary to have a more open mindset. If an individual cultivates an open mindset, they are more likely to lead a truly meaningful existence in this world. Otherwise, given that the world today is entirely different from the past, with information virtually exploding and constantly appearing before one's eyes, at such times our mindset should be more relaxed, which is very good. There are a great multitude of complex issues that require the concerted effort and shared focus of all humanity for their successful resolution, emphasizing the crucial truth that the human race fundamentally possesses a great number of essential common traits and shared characteristics. No matter what kind of people, all across the entire world, our fundamental physical structure is basically the same in essence. It's just that some are taller and some are shorter, that's all. Similarly, our ultimate aspirational goals remain essentially the same, characterized by the universal motivation to avoid suffering and seek happiness, and consequently, our basic modes of existence are also largely uniform. We sleep at night and start working during the day. Only a very few people have rather unique karmic experiences. At night, they get up like owls and then sleep during the day. These are extremely rare cases. They're called people with special karma. Our lifestyles are also basically the same. Our physical structure is the same as well, and our facial features are basically similar too. The vast majority of human beings are endowed with just 2 eyes, 1 nose, and 2 ears. Aside from those with particular physical anomalies, this fundamental morphology is essentially universal, constitute the common knowledge shared by all humankind. We absolutely must not allow differences in skin color, variations in religious beliefs, distinctions in race, diversity in ethnicity, national boundaries, or geographical separations based on cardinal directions and regions to become justifications for our mutual incompatibility and systematic exclusion of one another, as such behavior is profoundly unnecessary. On the contrary, our imperative should be to utilize love, wisdom, and compassion as the primary means to embrace the entirety of this world, recognizing that resolving the multitude of issues that exist even within the human community through the power of unconditional love offers an exceedingly reliable solution. Otherwise, if people often use what is now called destructive emotions, those intense and often overwhelming feelings that can lead to negative outcomes and significant distress for individuals and those around them, and when we consistently live with and harbor these destructive, negative, and overwhelming emotions, it can actually significantly harm and compromise our own body's natural immunity. Our destructive emotions actually bring a lot of profoundly negative effects and immense suffering to humanity as a whole, to countless families, to the very fabric of society, and to individuals themselves. In this case, across the entire globe, if humanity truly wants to create a truly happy and beautiful life for the entire future, for all people, there should be a common ground, a genuine sense of mutual complementarity. Regardless of who an individual is, we must first interpret their viewpoints by regarding them simply as the perspective of a fellow human being, thereby successfully minimizing the potential for excessive conflicts and disagreements between us. Otherwise, things may escalate into war, civil war, foreign war, cold war, or hot war. Many human wars are actually caused by our own destructive emotions indeed. That is to say, by our intense anger and deeply hateful attitudes. When each and every one of us harbors these destructive tendencies, in other words, this kind of intensely angry, truly hateful mindset is actually quite harmful to our own personal health, significantly harmful to our cherished friends around us, and also quite detrimental to our own professional careers. When someone is in a bad mood, even their sleep at night is affected, their work during the day is abnormal, and they may even lose their appetite. For example, if someone loses their temper with another person today, arguing with them over the phone, and after the argument, even though it's precisely noon and the perfect time for a satisfying lunch, they just cannot bring themselves to eat. That day, a friend was treating them to a delicious meal, but because they had just been involved in an intense argument with someone, they have no appetite at all. When a person doesn't eat, it actually affects their nutrition and overall health to some extent. Consequently, individuals who perpetually harbor a negative state of mind consistently suffer from poor sleep quality, inadequate appetite, and troubled social interactions. and indirectly, whether through immediate contact or unseen circumstances, we bring a lot of negative effects to our own body and mind. Therefore, when discussing traditional culture today, I believe it is paramount that we maintain an excellent and receptive state of mind to graciously welcome every sentient being we encounter. This is also a very good thing. This morning, some additional Taoist monastics came yesterday, and a few came today as well, and we had some truly meaningful and engaging exchanges. Although my time is quite limited, and I really don't have much time this trip, I am genuinely and truly happy from the very bottom of my heart to interact with each and every one of you, including during the World Youth Buddhist Symposium. We have consistently extended invitations to representatives of Taoism and Confucianism, as well as various other global religions, a practice that has been sustained for nearly 8 years now, dedicating one afternoon each year to successfully establish a collaborative interfaith platform for mutual exchange. Then each person, each representative of every religion, on those various important topics that are concerned all over the world, elaborate their own personal views. We don't discuss who is right or wrong. Each person, for example, when it comes to important and complex topics like sustainable development or something else, like the profound concepts of happiness and global peace, and future issues, including artificial intelligence and Buddhism and so on topics like these, each and every religious representative indeed explains their particular perspective based entirely on their own deeply held religious teachings. Sometimes, in many significant respects, the differences are really just minor, superficial ones like specific rituals, distinctive clothing, or unique hairstyles. It might even just be subtle differences in certain daily practices, particular meditation methods, or precise recitation techniques. In fact, there is a great deal that we can truly learn from each other. In this significant way, we all inherently share some common language, and we also possess some common pursuits. Furthermore, we also have shared goals, which are ultimately achieved through shared ideals. This profoundly helps many sentient beings. You could certainly say it benefits countless beings. Therefore, I firmly believe that many adherents and followers of these ancient traditions, or perhaps some insightful scholars, should occasionally pause and reflect upon the world in its entirety and comprehensively consider what it genuinely requires and truly needs. Considering the unique juncture that humanity has reached today, I believe it is essential for practitioners, scholars, and researchers alike to dedicate themselves to thoroughly investigating and exploring a diverse range of different doctrines and philosophical teachings. First of all, we shouldn't label things as, oh, this isn't mine, this belongs to someone else. If we do that, it might not be very beneficial. So what I mean is, in the future, the doctrines of different religions around the world should actively communicate and engage in thoughtful discussions with each other. This is also my view, to learn from each other doctrinally. Especially when it comes to religious doctrines, they should be positive. Except perhaps for some that were fabricated later on, some extreme religious doctrines. I can't be certain about those. But the truly profound and essential doctrines of religion are all ultimately intended to guide people towards a genuine, good and beautiful, profoundly meaningful and deeply fulfilling liberation. A liberation where one's body and mind are freed in this life and in future lives as well. This kind of direction, and everyone is practicing in this way. Therefore, I think that many religious doctrines are also necessary, and everyone should have an open and accepting mindset. This kind of approach is very important in today's modern society. Even more importantly, there are some people who are deeply religious believers, but for those without religious beliefs, we should also leave them a space for freedom. We cannot assume that just because I have faith, I am 100% a good person. And if you don't have faith, wow, you are constantly pointing fingers at others. If you are always looking for others' faults, that's actually not very good either. At that time in India, during the very lifetime of Shakyamuni Buddha, there were a great many individuals holding different views, including both the faithful and the non-believers. This is why I believe that even we, as religious adherents, should sometimes stand in our own place, while also making a conscientious effort to empathize with and see things from another's perspective. It's also necessary to observe things in this way. Earlier, I might have shared just some simple thoughts like this. In the future, for us as well, whether it's in our spiritual practice, in being a person, or in any aspect, it is truly best if we can maintain a more relaxed and calm mindset in all aspects and respects. Especially according to Buddhist teachings, all sentient beings possess Buddha nature. If we look at it from this level, our attitude toward the world is not just about humans, but even includes beings like ants and earthworms and all sentient beings above them. All of them have the seed of liberation and are worthy of our care and acceptance. We can interact with each other or benefit one another. This is a very meaningful thing. So in this way, in the future, whether in our own personal practice or in what we comprehensively call spreading the profound Dharma and truly benefiting all sentient beings, when we diligently create such a truly harmonious and supportive platform together with others, I think we probably won't have so many unnecessary worries or pressing concerns on many different levels, nor will there be so many misunderstandings and barriers that hinder progress and connection. I truly feel that life is quite short, and in this very brief life, I believe, most of our time should be spent doing meaningful things. If the majority of our precious time is spent on worries, concerns, and fears, then, or in distrust of others, then I truly think it's really not worth it at all. Today, we will continue our discussion of the classic of filial piety. Speaking of the classic of filial piety, earlier we extensively talked about filial piety for the revered emperor and for the powerful feudal lords. Today we will talk about the filial piety of the high-ranking officials and influential ministers. Actually, high officials and ministers are ranked below the emperor and the feudal lords. They are roughly equivalent to the main leaders of each province nowadays, for example, but they could also carry out some of the emperor's orders, and they could also implement some of the feudal lord systems. Feudal, in other words, these are official positions below the emperor and the feudal lords. Back in the ancient Zhou dynasty, during the significant time of King Wen of Zhou, the structure of the entire country and their methods were like this. So, as we study here, sometimes it might really suit the mindset of our era, and sometimes it might not necessarily, but there is indeed some truth to it. It seems that if we look at it from the perspective of modern living habits and modern ways, it might be hard to accept, but all of this is okay. We should still endeavor to maintain a relatively open and receptive mindset, just as I mentioned earlier. We're not trying to learn something that we must apply in its entirety. 100%, that's truly impossible anyway. Sometimes what we actually call true practice. We're discussing a precious garland of the supreme path. Every teaching has 10 principles, but I'm unsure how many I can apply. With some sets of 10 principles, translating them, some of them seemed rather hard to understand. So how exactly do we go about practicing these? They are not particularly easy or straightforward to use, you see. We might encounter this kind of situation, so I'm not sure how today's content will be. Let's see how it goes. How will modern people in today's world actually use or truly understand this concept? Well, this content should be quite simple indeed. If it is not the attire of the former kings, one does not dare to wear it. If it is not the language of the former kings, one does not dare to speak it. If it is not the virtue and conduct of the former kings, one does not dare to practice it. The previous lines mainly talk about their rules and regulations. One is about attire, another is about language, and another concerns virtue and conduct. The meaning is that if it is not the ceremonial attire established by the former kings, if it is not their clothing, it should not be worn lightly. One does not dare to wear it. There is this restraint, so they do not wear it. And if it is not the formal language established by the former kings, if it is not their kind of language, then one does not dare to speak it. In other words, everything strictly conforms to their laws. All the language strictly follows what the former kings prescribed. If you speak recklessly outside, saying things not prescribed by the former kings, then that would be irresponsible, so one does not dare to say it, does not dare to speak. If it is not the virtue and conduct of the former kings, this is because the former kings had established comprehensive regulations in many aspects, including certain specific moral behaviors and ethical conduct. If it is not such virtue and proper conduct, then absolutely no one would dare to carry it out. Therefore, these three crucial elements should be discussed from three distinct and different levels. Of course, the concepts I have just explained are derived from a very ancient philosophy, and while it may be difficult to apply them directly and completely to the current era, some of these principles can, in fact, be extrapolated and applied by analogy. First, the rule that one does not dare to wear clothing not prescribed by the former kings. Actually, at that particular time, it truly seemed that whether it was the Son of Heaven himself, or indeed others, whether it was the feudal lords, the high officials, or the lower-ranking scholars, they all had different ranks of clothing. For example, the Son of Heaven had symbols of the sun, moon, and stars on his garments. Then the feudal lords had mountains, dragons, and mythical creatures, these kinds of symbols. As for the high officials, their clothes also had patterns like aquatic plants and fire. That is to say, symbols of flowing water plants and burning fire. There were such distinctions, and then for the lower-ranking scholars, their clothing also had motifs like powdered rice, or perhaps white rice, something like that. There were also different colors. It seems that sometimes when we carefully look at ancient times, in different historical dynasties, the elaborate clothes worn by the powerful kings were all quite different. In the very earliest times, it is widely recounted that the robes traditionally worn by many ancient sovereigns were predominantly black, but this convention later shifted during the Tang dynasty period, at which point yellow became the principal color, which was also worn by the empress and the empress dowager, while the common citizenry were relegated to clothing of various other hues. This is something we can see even in many popular TV dramas nowadays. It's actually quite noticeable and apparent. Each person's social rank was distinctly different, and so too were the specific styles of their clothing. They certainly couldn't just wear whatever garments they desired. This principle was exactly the same here. If it was the Son of Heaven, he could wear any of the garments designated for those below his exalted rank, but if he was merely a high official or a distinguished noble, he could only wear his own clothes and those of lower ranks. He was not allowed to wear clothes of a higher rank. So at that particular time, there were indeed specific regulations regarding different types of clothing. It seems quite clear that this is also the case for monastics. For example, among Buddhist monks, the bhikkhus specifically have their own distinct and traditional set of 3 robes. For novices, the rules aren't quite as strict, and for lay practitioners and other cultivators, they each have their very own specific distinctions as well. Some individuals possess their own distinctive haking robes and other specific traditional garments. Each particular group maintains its own established regulations concerning their clothing. Actually, this is also a very good and commendable practice. If the clothing worn is not that of the revered former kings, then it absolutely should not be worn at all. This was a regulation that was specifically set for high officials and prominent nobles. However, perhaps even people in the secular world are also subject to such significant constraints. In fact, these kinds of constraints are actually quite beneficial. For example, in society, soldiers have their own appropriate uniforms. Physicians have their own specific attire, police officers have their uniforms, and in fact, most individuals from different professional backgrounds throughout society have a form of dress that is highly consistent with their particular identity, though it is true that this custom is no longer strictly followed by the majority of people in most countries today. Some people just wear whatever they want. Today they wear black, tomorrow they wear pristine white. The day after they wear a vibrant red, then a lush green, then a rich purple, and then a brilliant blue, followed by a lighter, sunny yellow, and then a somewhat deep off-black color. All sorts of different colors, changing every day, so in the end others don't even know whether this person is white or black. You just can't tell. Most people, based on the specific clothes they genuinely like to wear, can also be clearly identified by what particular color they strongly prefer. There are indeed many cases like this too. So here, you can also clearly see that throughout the entirety of human history, in some places clothing has been taken very seriously. Of course, some young people today might feel that all of this is just a kind of restriction, They'd rather not have these rules. They just want to wear whatever they truly like. Today they wear jeans with holes at the knees, and tomorrow something else entirely. They expose substantial portions of their body, adopting this look because they believe it is fashionable and keeps them current with the demands of the times. There are some people like that too, but there's no really any need to outright deny it at all, because for them it's also a form of cultural expression. But at the same time, there's no need to overly praise it either, because even in nations often characterized by extreme openness and liberalism, it is still the custom that when their highly important figures attend official functions or formal gatherings, they adhere to the convention of wearing standardized business suits or elaborate ceremonial dress code. It's the same for them. So sometimes we really need to truly understand the basic rules of society. At such times, what you wear can be very important too. For example, as a dedicated monastic, I firmly believe that monastics should still continue to wear their traditional monastic robes. No matter what the occasion, it's still better to prefer wearing monastic attire. Otherwise, some monastics especially like to wear lay people's ordinary clothes. And if that continues to happen, as Mipham Rinpoche said in the treatise on the modes of a ruler, that a person's words, their actions, and their attire can often reveal something. They can reveal aspects of that person's future, for example. From the clothing and behavior of Tibetan people, you can see the future destiny of Tibetans. From the distinctive customs or behaviors of Han people, you can truly see their future trajectory. And for any ethnicity or people of any skin color in the world, their future can also be somewhat foreseen in this way. Including some monastics nowadays, what I truly wanted to say just now is this: because they especially like to wear ordinary lay people's clothes, you see, they may gradually over time become lay people themselves. Some lay people, on the other hand, especially like to wear monastic robes, and it's also possible that they may become monastics in the future. So, as the saying goes, in the world there are also such cases. Some behaviors of a 3-year-old child can also reveal his future, the path his life will take. That's why what we wear is very important. What am I trying to say here? There was an ancient saying, one should not wear clothes other than those prescribed by the former kings. Similarly, for us, for example, as Buddhists, we also do not wear any clothes other than those specifically prescribed by the Buddha. This is also a very good and beneficial practice, isn't it? In the past, in the Buddhist scriptures, there was Venerable Nanda, who was actually the Buddha's cousin. He was actually very tall, quite similar, in fact, to the Buddha himself. The Buddha possessed 32 auspicious marks, while Nanda had 30, missing only 2 of them. However, in terms of his overall height, he was just a little bit shorter than the Buddha. Nanda was especially fond of the Buddha and very much wanted to emulate him. So, when he meticulously made his monastic robes, he crafted them to be exactly the same as the Buddha's. The overall size was precisely the same, and the distinctive shape was exactly the same too. Later on, the 2 of them probably even looked a bit alike. And often, when the monks lived together, whenever Nanda arrived, they all thought the Buddha had arrived, so everyone stood up respectfully. But when they looked, it was always Nanda. This happened several times. Later, some of the monks became unhappy and went to tell the Buddha about it. Nanda dressed exactly like the Buddha every day. Because of this, we keep having these situations. He doesn't have the Buddha's virtues, so why does he wear the Buddha's robes? Later, the Buddha specifically established a rule. Those who do not have the Buddha's tall and noble physique cannot make that particular kind of robe. There are also some specific regulations regarding these robes. So, for example, the 3 essential robes of monastics have indeed been faithfully passed down for well over 2,500 years to the present day. There is a very important and significant history behind them. So generally speaking, monastics truly are like this, and I also sincerely hope that the esteemed monastics present here today, in any given situation in their daily lives, it is always best to wear appropriate clothing that truly suits your own unique and sacred identity. Otherwise, as is the case with a very small number of monastics in certain places nowadays, they are very dignified and respectful when inside the monastery, but as soon as they leave the sacred premises, they meticulously take everything off and put it into a box. Then they change into something entirely different. In this particular way, they may unfortunately lose some of the established rules of conduct, which is truly unnecessary. As for other religions, I have seen that each religion has its own different and unique attire. In fact, behind this fascinating aspect, we also know that there is some particularly important and significant history. So when we see these different outfits and diverse clothing styles, it's truly best to take the time to learn about them and their cultural significance. If you really don't have time to learn, it's important to understand and respect them. This is about not daring to wear clothing that is not prescribed by the ancient kings. The second point is about not using language that is not from the ancient kings' laws, meaning language that is not part of the laws and regulations of the ancient kings. We do not dare to carry out or implement it. Of course, at that time, this was related to the law. Perhaps the king was formulating policies back then, and the language he established at that time was related to these policies. But when we truly speak, if our spoken words do not conform to the natural established worldly rules, nor to the rules that transcend the world, such language should be avoided as much as possible. That's best. Because linguistics is indeed very important, and it is truly the universal language of the entire world. It should be observed with right knowledge and right mindfulness. Rinpoche Mifam also talked about this, right? All worldly matters of acceptance and rejection can be understood through words. The choices we make in the world are actually understood through language. Therefore, no matter what words are spoken, one should consider their merits and faults before speaking. So no matter what particular language we choose to use, we should always carefully and thoughtfully consider both its inherent faults and its undeniable virtues. When we speak, in fact, a single person's speech may indeed bring immense happiness and profound joy to a great many people. A person's speech can also bring great pain to many people. Consequently, when engaging in conversation with anyone, one must consciously and carefully observe and ask, should I really utter these words? Is this statement truly necessary? And what are its potential advantages versus its possible disadvantages? Sadly, some individuals fail entirely to practice such discernment as long as there is an opportunity. They just keep talking non-stop like a chanting machine. Such indiscriminate speech is certainly inadvisable. The fundamental rule of conduct dictates that one should speak only when it is appropriate and must remain silent when it is not, a crucial principle which necessitates a thorough comprehension of the countless societal matters that are inextricably linked to the proper use of language. The numerous conflicts as well as the moments of harmony that arise between different nations and various human tribal communities are, in fact, largely precipitated by the use of language. For instance, when negotiations are successful, a peaceful accord is reached, but when they fail, the state of affairs descends into the initiation of warfare. This is something we all know, and it's the same between individuals. When two people get along, it's also related to language. Sometimes, even a single poorly chosen word spoken between two individuals can unfortunately lead to significant conflict, and then it can potentially last forever. And sometimes the underlying conflict runs very deep. This too is profoundly related to the nuances of language. Therefore, it is essential that we need to learn how to speak effectively. Everyone thinks that, I've been able to speak since I was a child and I'm actually quite good at it. But some people, unfortunately, every time they truly open their mouths, end up offending quite a lot of people. Some people know themselves that their words have offended many others, so they often choose to simply remain silent. Some individuals truly need to practice self-discipline and indeed keep silent. Other people genuinely feel they're not particularly good at speaking, so they hang an especially large sign around their necks that says silent, just like the placards used during sentencing. Back during the Cultural Revolution, sometimes a few times, everyone had a big sign hanging around their necks, those kinds of things. Now, some practitioners can be seen from as far as 100 meters away with the words silent written on their chest. But actually, this has its benefits too. A lot of people just don't want to talk. These days, there's really not much worth saying in the world. It's better to just focus on practicing well, that's all. If one does not possess the virtue of the ancient sages, one should not dare to act rashly. If it's not the virtues established by the ancient sages, the virtues they practiced at that time, they were basically what Confucianism refers to as benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trustworthiness. Summing it up now, it's like what we talk about, the 10 virtuous deeds, the 3 refugees, and the 5 precepts. Especially the 10 virtuous deeds, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct. These behaviors are the noble conduct and fundamental behaviors of an individual are such that they should not engage in any actions that fall outside the bounds of basic human morality. Confucius also famously articulated that, look not at what is contrary to propriety, listen not to what is contrary to propriety, speak not what is contrary to propriety, and make no movement that is contrary to propriety. Do not look at things that are not in accordance with propriety. Do not listen to sounds that are not in accordance with propriety. Do not speak words that are not in accordance with proper conduct or decorum. Do not do things that are not in accordance with proper behavior. He talked about many actions that are truly improper. These are indeed immoral acts. So the above refers to one aspect concerning attire and another concerning language. There is also the aspect of behavior. In fact, these should all be very important. When we talk about precepts, we also discuss how to dress and how to speak, what our daily behavior should truly be like. There are indeed rules for all of these important aspects. Therefore, do not speak what is unlawful and do not act on what is not in accordance with the way. So it can be succinctly and clearly summarized as follows. To sum up, it is essential that we do not speak words that are unlawful or improper in any way. We must also not engage in unreasonable or immoral actions. As the saying goes, let the mouth not utter careless words, let the body not perform careless actions. If the mouth does not utter improper words, then when one is speaking, there is truly no inherent need to make a conscious choice. There is absolutely nothing to choose from in that moment. At a certain advanced point, whatever you articulate and say will not violate the established rules. And similarly, when it comes to performing actions, the physical body also doesn't need to make a deliberate choice. Whatever is done will not go against the principles of morality. We often say, when hungry, one doesn't choose food. When in a hurry, one doesn't choose the path. There are sayings like this as well. Here, the word choose implies a certain degree of selectivity. You could certainly interpret it in this particular way too. Or, if we were to use the word improper, it specifically refers to something that is distasteful or inherently bad. You could therefore say that whatever is spoken forth from the mouth, there absolutely won't be any harsh, offensive, or truly unpleasant language. And the actions taken by the body won't be the kind that people find unpleasant or disagreeable. To others, it should feel very comfortable, pleasant, and indeed quite delightful to witness. When others hear your words, they will also feel genuinely happy and truly delighted, experiencing a sense of joy and contentment. Such speech and behavior are all proper and in accordance with the rules. So a person like this, one whose words fill the world, yet no fault is found in their speech, whose actions fill the world, yet no one resents or dislikes them. Such a person, you could say, when they reach this level, even if your words are widely known throughout the entire world, there are absolutely no faults or imperfections to be found within your speech. This is because, as it has been previously mentioned above, this is a person who is extremely reasonable and undeniably upright in all their dealings. No matter which particular corner of the world they truly speak in, whatever they wish to say, there are absolutely no faults or imperfections in their carefully chosen words. Everyone is genuinely happy to accept and embrace what they say, no matter where your significant actions are carried out, in any specific place. No one in the entire world will ever resent you or feel any dislike or discomfort towards you whatsoever. Your actions should also be able to stand up to careful scrutiny. In fact, this is also very important in some of the fundamental precepts of Buddhism, because people pay very close attention to their words and actions, and this is a truly very good form of spiritual practice. In the application of mindfulness of the sacred Dharma, it is also said, caution is truly the best friend, always bringing benefit, always. If we are careful and cautious, very prudent and attentive, this is the best kind of friend. In the long run, this is very meaningful both for oneself and for others. Negligence is the greatest enemy, so one should stay close to good friends. Heedlessness or negligence is considered, in essence, the demon of malice, which is why it is highly advisable for any person, in whatever undertaking they pursue, to rely upon and associate with virtuous friends. Specifically, that virtuous friendship should be cultivated with prudence, demanding that all human endeavors be approached with the utmost caution and circumspection. Earlier, we talked about being extremely vigilant, as if standing on the very edge of an abyss, or carefully walking on thin ice. This is still very important. Being extremely careful and being highly attentive is crucial no matter what you do in any situation. Whether it's in our speech, actions, or even the way we dress, actually, regardless of whether you personally have faith or not, it is still very much important for an individual person in their everyday daily life. This includes some dedicated practitioners who, when they are at home, according to the established precepts, if you are in your own home, when others cannot readily see you, your personal attire, such as some monastic clothing, is not strictly or rigidly regulated. However, when they appear in the sight of others, there is a distinct special requirement for their dress. Consequently, our clothing becomes a matter of considerable importance, especially when we are attending dignified occasions or entering settings where specific rules of conduct are observed. Some practitioners say, "Oh, it doesn't matter, it's all the same no matter what you wear. Not attached, anything is fine, it doesn't matter." We find this very troublesome. These leaders are always nitpicking every day. What I wear is my own business, what I think is my own business. It's about freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of action. But sometimes freedom doesn't truly mean you can simply indulge in absolutely everything, in saying whatever you want and doing whatever you please. For as the old saying goes, without rules, nothing can be accomplished. It is essential to have a well-defined set of rules that serve as an excellent form of self-restraint for a person. I think that is very good. Back in 1990, at that time, I saw the conduct of many great masters, and I silently made a vow. I vowed that when I teach and explain the Dharma in the future, I would definitely wear this kind of clothing. I silently made this vow myself. I don't know if I said it in front of His Holiness. But from 1990 until now, unless it's a truly special occasion, this is basically how I always am. So the entire first half of my life has basically come to a complete and utter end. The second half, I don't know what will happen in the future. Sometimes people have self-discipline, whether it's about clothing or something else. Some people have told me, "Hey, you're not open-minded at all." They say, "Lama wears this today and something else tomorrow. You should wear more variety. Can you wear this outfit?" They generously offer me all kinds of beautiful clothes in many different colors, all incredibly bright and wonderfully flashy. Sometimes I cautiously try them on in private, truly afraid that others might possibly see me. Only when there's absolutely no filming going on, that's when I'll secretly try them on and think to myself, "Wow, this actually looks pretty good, surprisingly good." But for the time being, right now, I just don't possess the necessary courage to do so. I still don't dare to wear anything at all other than the very familiar and comfortable traditional attire that I'm accustomed to wearing. So sometimes I truly do want to wear something a little bit different and unique. This is especially true during the summer season, when it becomes incredibly hot and humid in the bustling, vibrant big city. Our clothes have two layers, inside and out. So if I don't wear the inner layer, it's a bit better, certainly. But if I skip the inner layer entirely, it's still not really appropriate, you see. And then if I do wear it, since it's actually supposed to be two layers anyway, when the weather gets hot, it becomes quite uncomfortable, especially in places at school without air conditioning. It's pretty uncomfortable for me. But I still pretend. Perhaps it's merely just putting on a show of dignity and a certain refined composure. But whether it's just for show or a matter of deeply held principle, for now, that's precisely how it is. But who truly knows about the future? Because everything is inherently impermanent. The situation in the whole world is also constantly changing. The seasons, spring, summer, autumn, and winter, are impermanent, and people's mindsets are impermanent too. So I can't say what I'll wear in the future. Maybe someday I'll even wear a police uniform to give a lecture. Who knows? No one can truly be sure, right? No matter what exactly happens. If I were to wear a police uniform, perhaps no one would really listen, but it just might work if I were to go into a prison. If I go into a prison and wear a police uniform, then at least... When I wear monastic robes into a prison, sometimes it feels a bit awkward. But if I wore a police uniform, I don't know if the people in prison would listen to the lecture. So sometimes people do have certain rules about these things. This is also very important, especially I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier. Language really is very important. Some of our esteemed Dharma teachers are exceptionally good at giving profound teachings and insightful lectures. This also includes our dedicated counselors, but the language itself still possesses its own unique characteristics. There are certain established Buddhist guidelines and specific training programs designed for this. We should therefore make some thorough preparations in advance ourselves. If there's no time to prepare, then while speaking, we should also rely on right knowledge and right mindfulness. It should be found within the Water and Wood Shastras, where Gongtang Dambi Junmei wisely stated, no matter how much or how little a person speaks, you only truly know them when you observe how they actually act. Sometimes someone may be very eloquent, but when it comes to actually doing things, you realize that this person is quite good at talking, but not so good at actually getting things done. As the old saying goes, no matter how wide or how narrow a river is, you only truly know its depth once you actually cross it. So, when we encounter a river, at first we don't know how deep it is. But once you cross it, once you step over it, you realize, the water is actually quite shallow. So, in the foreseeable future, no matter how articulately and proficiently we even truly speak, if we don't actually put things into action, it won't work either. That's why, for some counselors and Dharma teachers, sometimes language is indeed very important. But what's even more important is action. Action matters more. Both language and action are especially important. Therefore, this should be from Mifam Rinpoche. In the Advice on the Rules of Conduct, there's a particular line that I really quite like. If one's words and actions are unreliable, no one will respect them. We've discussed this before. It's necessary to discuss the treatise on the modes of a ruler. That is to say, if one's words and actions are not trustworthy, then no one will respect them. This is very important. I hope many people will remember this line. We should also require this of ourselves, that is, our words and actions. Actually, this is very simple. You can even memorize it. If one's words and actions are unreliable, no one will respect them. The profound meaning here is that absolutely no one will truly respect you because your spoken words don't genuinely count for anything at all. Some people often say, you monastics certainly can't tell lies. So it's also very, very important for monastics not to lie. However, lay people too absolutely shouldn't lie either. Not lying is not just a precept for monastics. Lay people have it too. So you can clearly see the 10 virtues are not just exclusively for monastics. Some people say to us, you monastics can't tell lies. Actually, both monastics and lay people shouldn't lie. None of us should ever lie. You absolutely cannot lie. And I myself cannot lie either, right? Language and behavior, both are very important for a person. If a person's behavior is also unreliable, if you look at their actions and see that they're not in accordance with the Dharma at all, if they have no principles or rules at all, then such a person, others won't respect you or hold you in esteem either. Actually, for a person who is like this, some people might genuinely feel that, no one can stand me, everyone dislikes me. Why is that? On one hand, it might be related to past lives, to the person's spiritual practice in previous lives. But on the other hand, in this life, it is also related to one's own words and actions. When it comes to our words and actions, we can think of texts like Mifam Rinpoche's treatise on the modes of a ruler and treatise on the modes of being, as well as the Sakya aphorisms and the Water and Wood Shastras, and in the Han region, the collection of aphorisms and couplets. It's really necessary to study many of these teachings. Some people think of themselves as practitioners, believing they have attained a very high level of realization, but in reality, they don't even have the basic universal rules of conduct for human beings. In that case, it's impossible to even talk about spiritual practice. It's impossible to talk about religion, let alone faith. Enlightenment and benefiting sentient beings become even more distant goals. That's why sometimes our precious guru, truly whether in his regular teachings or in guiding his disciples, and even when teaching about Dzogchen practice, the guru brings up how to conduct oneself as a person. When the guru talks about being a person, he directly connects it to Dzogchen, which is very profound. This is the kind of transcendence that belongs to a great practitioner, a great accomplished master. Nowadays, some people have this kind of transcendence, and some tell me that my way of speaking jumps around a lot. When translating, it's impossible to connect the middle part smoothly. I sometimes notice this myself as well. I myself don't even know when I suddenly jump to another topic. This is a kind of freedom, liberation, and ease. So practitioners should truly transcend. This is also very necessary, right? When all three essential elements are present, then one can indeed uphold his ancestral temple. This is the profound filial piety of high officials and nobles. These are the three conditions mentioned above. If one can truly possess proper, respectful speech, exemplary conduct, and appropriate attire, then such a person can effectively safeguard his ancestral temple and its enduring legacy. The ancestral temple is also what was mentioned earlier, the place where rituals are performed. This is the same as what was discussed before. In fact, as a high official or noble, he has ancestral temples that correspond to his status, and he has his own ritual sites as well. Actually, many people care a lot about their ancestral temples after death. Even now, some people still attach great importance to this. It seems that in China there are such practices, and in Japan, some people also value memorial tablets for the deceased. Buddhists also place a great deal of significant importance on various rituals for those who have passed away. According to the customs of that time, if you could successfully fulfill the aforementioned conditions, then as a distinguished high official or a respected noble, your elevated status and prominent position, your entire official rank and standing could be meticulously maintained and continue to exist permanently. This enduring stability is also extremely important and profoundly significant. So this is roughly, approximately, what is truly and profoundly meant by the concept of filial piety as practiced by high-ranking officials and esteemed nobles. The content of their filial piety is basically like this. Next, he cites a scriptural reference. The actual content of this reference indeed says, "Day and night, without any slackening whatsoever, serve one single person." This means that throughout the entire day and night, without any form of relaxation or letting up, Fei signifies an extreme degree, and Zi denotes the concept of not being lax or negligent. Therefore, day and night, without any relaxation or slackness. It should refer to his superior serving his leader. This is a rule that a high official or noble should follow. Sometimes we say, serve the people wholeheartedly, serve the leaders wholeheartedly and truly rely on the guru and follow the teachings. Anyway, humanity has many good slogans, but in reality, indeed, are we truly and completely wholehearted in our endeavors, or are we merely half-hearted, lacking full commitment? Each individual person inherently knows this about themselves, so whether in deeply religious circles or among other more worldly people, the fundamental truth remains precisely the same. Here too it is explicitly stated that one should, both day and night, without ceasing, for example, in the spiritual tradition of Buddhism, you pray diligently day and night to your revered guru and the sacred three jewels, and within each distinct religion there are also some nuanced differences. Day and night they deeply meditate on their yidam, their principal main deity. There are indeed various such profound methods of practice. All of these diverse approaches are entirely possible. Therefore, here finally, as it is clearly stated in the ancient book of songs, in short, the true and genuine filial piety of the high officials mentioned above, he completely and fully accepts all the orders and directives from above. He must strictly carry them out. This is also a kind of cultural inheritance. Of course, within this there may also have been political motives or goals at the time. In fact, in ancient cultures, the powerful rulers of the time might have often required all influential leaders, as well as all common people, to strictly abide by a unified and comprehensive set of rules. Such fundamental teachings were also profoundly needed to maintain societal order and harmony. Therefore, the concept of filial piety mentioned here is not just filial piety toward one's biological parents, but encompasses a much broader societal obligation. When we talk about the standards for being a good student and child, filial piety there, its meaning and scope are somewhat different from this, because this was during the spring and autumn and warring states periods, probably, I'm not sure. But as we discussed earlier, there are different interpretations of the classic of filial piety. So at that particular point in time, in actual fact, there were also a multitude of diverse and distinct cultural meanings deeply embedded within it. These profound and significant meanings were subtly implied within the context, suggesting that this was indeed the expected and appropriate state of affairs. Right, today we talked about filial piety. Not sure how it went, but I guess it's fine.
Bandara Banma Sodargye